Hello everyone, my name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute. Thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings. Well, we're going to have a special segment here. We've had a request to comment on Isaiah chapter 17. Isaiah chapter 17 is an interesting passage, and the reason I've been asked to comment on it, very often my dispensational friends look desperately, and I use that term, they look desperately for some prophecy, any prophecy, that was not fulfilled in AD 70. I've had radio debates, I've had internet debates with dispensationalists, and in their frustration to find prophecy, and in their desperation to find prophecy that was not fulfilled in AD 70, contrary to Jesus' words in Luke 21:22, in which he, describing the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, said, "These be the days of vengeance in which all things that are written must be fulfilled," my friends have said, and my debate opponents have said, look at Isaiah chapter 17. This predicted the destruction of Damascus. This predicted the destruction of Damascus in Syria. They were going to be made like a mound, like a heap, totally destroyed. That's never been done. Well, it's sometimes sad to see the lengths to which people will go in order to make some argument, any argument, in their attempts to justify and to sustain their own view. And I say that as kindly as possible. We as human beings are prone to hang on to what we have always been taught. But those who make the claim that Damascus has never ever been destroyed, as described in Isaiah chapter 17, are simply ignorant of secular history. And I say that as kindly as possible. Here's something that is absolutely historically undeniable. By the way, you can find this in McClintock and Strong Encyclopedia of Ancient Literature. You can find this in the Word Biblical Commentaries. You can find this in any number of Bible dictionaries that make comment on Damascus and Syria and their ancient history. But here's the fact. In 732 BC, Tiglath Pilezer, boy, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Tiglath Pilezer, the king of the Assyrians, now that's not the Syrians, Assyrians versus Syrians, okay? But Tiglath Pilezer wrote his chronicles. That's known as, the records of his wars, the records of his conquest. And he said in his chronicles, written in approximately 732 BC, that he had made 714 cities as, quote, mounds as if destroyed by a flood, unquote. So, here is Tiglath-Pileser saying that he had and by the way, he chronicles Damascus as one of those cities. So, here we have Tiglath-Pileser of the Assyrians, who was the dominant force when Isaiah wrote, chronicling that he had in fact destroyed the Syrian capital. And of course it was a prediction when Isaiah 17 wrote, but Tiglath-Pileser operated and functioned after this was written, and so it was fulfilled by Tiglath-Pileser. Now, there's something about the text that my dispensational friends really like to ignore. Because you see, Isaiah chapter 17 does not agree at all with the dispensational view of things. Here's what I mean. While my dispensational friends point to Isaiah chapter 17 and say, see, that will be fulfilled in the last days. That's a last days prophecy. Let me make a few observations. Point number one, Isaiah 17 does not use the term, it shall come to pass in the last days. Point number two, notice verse 4. It says, in that day. What day? In the day in which Damascus of Syria would be leveled and would be made into a heap, it says the glory of Israel would wane or will wane. Now here's a prophecy predicting the destruction of Damascus in Syria and saying that about the same time that Damascus in Syria would be destroyed, the glory of Israel would likewise fade. Now, notice verse 6. In verse 6, it says that although the glory of Israel would fade, there would be a remnant. There would be like when they glean the trees. There would be just a few left at the very top. Now notice verse 9. In that day, in what day? This is the day in which Damascus would be destroyed. In that day, Israel's strong cities would be forsaken and destroyed as well. Well, guess what happened? The Assyrians, that's not the Syrians of Damascus, but the Assyrians took the 10 northern tribes of Israel into captivity. So here we have the days of the Assyrian Empire. They destroyed Damascus and Syria, historically verified, historically undeniable. And Isaiah said that when Damascus would be destroyed, the cities of Israel would likewise be desolated, and Israel's glory would fade. And in 721 BC, under the invasion of the Assyrians, Israel's glory faded, and Israel's cities were desolated and destroyed in fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 17. So, when my dispensational friends casting around to find some prophecy that was not fulfilled in the ancient times or even in the, quote, last days, unquote, when they appeal to Isaiah chapter 17, they are unfortunately appealing to a text that can be historically verified to have been destroyed in the days of the Assyrian Empire. Hey, thanks for asking me to make comment on Isaiah chapter 17. I appreciate your input. I appreciate hearing from you. If there are subjects, topics, or passages that you would like for me to do a YouTube presentation on, send me an email. Go to my website, www.eschatology.org or www.bibleprophecy.com. My email is on both websites. Send me an email or, make a comment on this YouTube and ask me and let me know what you would like for me to comment on and make a YouTube presentation on. I really do appreciate it. I honestly do. Thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings. We'll see you on the flip side.